Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The province turns up the pressure on 10 municipalities to build more housing. Altogether, 60,000 new units by 2028. Are these targets too hard to meet, or are they not enough? We'll get reaction from the mayor of Oak Bay and from the group Abundant Housing Vancouver. We're asking you as well, what housing is missing from your community? After 12:30, heading outdoors, what are your favorite ways to enjoy the beautiful fall weather? I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thank you for joining us on CBC Radio 1, live streaming too on CBC Gem, cbc.ca/BC, or on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. And as I mentioned, in our second half, we'll be talking about the great outdoors. And if you have any photos of a trip or a hike around BC in the fall, please send them to us. We'd love to showcase them on our live stream. You can email them to us right now, bctoday@cbc.ca. We'd love to see your photos. In other news now, the fallout from the parliament invitation of a Ukrainian veteran who fought with a Nazi unit continues. Anthony Rota apologized and then resigned as Speaker of the House for inviting the man to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's speech in Parliament last week. Now, since Rota's resignation, focus has turned to the Prime Minister to apologize. Justin Trudeau offered an apology in the House this past hour, but he maintains Rota was solely responsible. Here's a clip starting with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, followed by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
This Prime Minister allowed for a monumental, unprecedented, and global shame to unfold in this chamber. Will he take personal responsibility for this shame and personally apologize on behalf of himself?
Right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of all of us in this House, I would like to present unreserved apologies for what took place on Friday and to President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation for the position they were put in. For all of us who were present to have unknowingly recognized this individual was a terrible mistake and a violation of the memory of those who suffered grievously at the hands of the Nazi regime.
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
So the Prime Minister has just said that he allowed the president of a war-torn country, who is perhaps the biggest target of false propaganda and of potential assassinations, to be surrounded by hundreds of people who had not been vetted for their security background, their potential risks that they present, or in this case, the massive diplomatic disasters that they could have brought to that event. Is he really saying that he did absolutely nothing to protect the Ukrainian president from all of those many risks?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The facts are well known here. The Speaker issued the invitation, delivered the recognition, and has taken full responsibility. The Leader of the Opposition knows that not one parliamentarian was aware, but the truth does not matter to this Leader of the Opposition. He distorts, misleads, aims to confuse, all for partisan gain. It's all he knows how to do.
That exchange in this last hour in the House of Commons between Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We'll continue to follow that story, of course, on CBC. You can see the latest on cbc.ca and hear more on it on radio throughout the day, CBC Radio 1, and on television news as well. It's 12:10 now, 1:10 in the Mountain Time Zone. Well, back in this province, BC has ordered 60,000 new homes built in 10 municipalities in the next 5 years, or the province will step in to get it done. Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon announced the targets yesterday, which are supposed to include below-market rentals. Now, those 10 municipalities are Vancouver, Victoria, Kamloops, Abbotsford, Delta, Saanich, North Vancouver District, Port Moody, Oak Bay, and West Vancouver. And Minister Ravi Kahlon says the province will step in if those municipalities fail to meet those targets.
Within the legislation, we have power. If a government, local government, doesn't take appropriate action after 6 months, we have the ability to put an independent person in to identify what the challenges may be. They may be real, they may be just not wanting to participate. I suspect from my conversations that I've had with all the mayors that are in the first 10, that all of them understand that everyone has to be part of the housing solution. I don't expect that to be a challenge, but the legislation does give us the ability to step in if needed.
That's Housing Minister Ravi Kahlon speaking yesterday. Now, reaction from mayors has been mixed, with some asking where the money for this will come from. And later in the program, we'll be joined by the mayor of Oak Bay, who's looking for provincial support to meet their target of 664 units. We also want to hear from you what kind of housing is needed and missing in your community. You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. By email, send us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. Right now, we're going to hear from someone who says these targets are simply not enough. Joining me is Daniel Eliot. He's Director of Abundant Housing Vancouver. Daniel, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me on today to talk about this important issue.
Well, let's start with the largest municipality. The target in Vancouver is 28,900 units. How far does that go to meet the housing crisis in this city?
You know, I think Vancouver is a great place to start, because I think so much of what we've seen is that the housing crisis really started in Vancouver and flowed out from there. You know, we've seen people displaced from Vancouver moving to New West, and then people from New West having to move to Surrey, and so on. And I think one place to start is that we know the greatest demand by far is in the city of Vancouver. A lot of people want to live in Vancouver, and we haven't been building enough in Vancouver. That puts pressure on the whole region and eventually on the whole province. And the Vancouver numbers, frankly, are not really an increase over what Vancouver has been doing. So they're, in that sense, they're quite disappointing. What we have been doing hasn't been working. And this, I was surprised. A lot of people were surprised by these numbers. We thought it would mark more of a change from the status quo. And unfortunately, it's not a particular, it's barely an increase over what we have been doing.
The minister, Ravi Kahlon, made a point of saying these would be new units as opposed to replacing what buildings that are being torn down, older buildings that are being torn down. How far does that go? Is that not a new step?
Well, Vancouver's been building over the last 5 years about 5,000 or 6,000 net new units each year, and for the next 5 years in these targets, it's about 6,000. It's about 6,000 new units, net new units a year. So it's kind of baseline. It's not particularly an increase. So one way to look at it is the numbers. And another way to think about it is to get concrete and think about what this will mean in particular neighborhoods, like in declining neighborhoods in Vancouver, like Point Grey, Dunbar. Or in fact, in Oak Bay, we're going to have the mayor of Oak Bay on later. In Uplands in Oak Bay, you have these neighborhoods full of $5 million homes that and apartments are illegal. And I think that the mayors of these areas, the councillors who are responsible for these areas, and ultimately the ministers and the premiers provincially, because they have the power to change it too, are responsible to explain to the public why it's illegal to build apartments in these neighborhoods full of $5 million homes. This announcement today is not it's not going to push municipalities to change that. Abundant Housing Vancouver and a lot of other people think we should open up these neighborhoods to a lot more people, and yesterday's announcement is simply not going to do that.
Let's just follow up on that. Isn't Vancouver doing more to try and encourage more multi-unit housing on single-family lots?
That has been the headline, but if you look at what's actually being proposed in Vancouver, it's a 16% increase in the allowed floor space. It's actually a smaller increase than the laneway homes that were added just over a decade ago. So one way to think about it is this upcoming change at the Vancouver City Council is a little bit less than the laneway home addition 10 or 15 years ago. It's too little, too late. I think what we're seeing from both the province and from the Vancouver City Council, is they're looking for the headline that says, we're doing something. But when it comes to taking action to really allow more housing in some of these neighborhoods, they're still falling short. So they want to make the announcement, and then the announcements so far have been so far pretty underwhelming. None of it's going to legalize apartments on the beautiful, quiet streets overlooking parks where people really want to live. That's not what we're looking at just yet.
Let's put out the numbers again, asking you, do you think your municipality, whether it's Vancouver or Oak Bay or any one of these other 8 municipalities that are on the list of 10, are they doing enough to meet the housing need in your community? And what do you think is missing? Love to hear from you. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. By email, bctoday@cbc.ca. My guest is Daniel Eliot, Director of Abundant Housing Vancouver. Okay, so the numbers that you just went through with us, Daniel, it sounds like you said about 5,000 or 6,000 per year over 5 years. It's fairly similar to that target of 28,000. Let's say the difference of about 3,000 or so. So, let's talk about numbers. What is a number that you think is needed to catch up and to meet the demand of the growing population?
So that's a great question. One place we have those numbers is from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which estimates that over 10 years, BC needs an additional 570,000 units over what it would have built. That's 570,000 units to achieve additional and that's over 10 years.
And what would that be in Vancouver?
In Vancouver, that's hard to say exactly for Vancouver, but what we have here is 60,000 units in 10 municipalities over 5 years. So that's over 10 years, 120,000.
Okay.
Falls way short of the CMHC numbers. Abundant Housing Vancouver estimates we need to about triple housing production in Vancouver in order to really start to bring prices down, in order to really moderate prices. And that sounds like a lot, but you have to consider that Vancouver has been the slowest growing municipality in percentage terms over 50 years in the whole Metro Vancouver region. Every other municipality has grown in percentage terms faster than Vancouver. So it's 50 years of underbuilding, of sprawl, of displacement. Because what we've chosen to do is to keep detached homes in expensive neighborhoods in the central city and force people to move farther and farther and farther away. So what Abundant Housing Vancouver would like to see is we should just build more housing in the places we know that people want to be. And less farther away that leads to longer commutes, moving away from friends, more pollution. We should just build housing in the places that people want to be. It's really simple, and that would be about a tripling to go back to your question.
Some mayors may say it's not that simple, right? The mayors who are reacting to these targets saying they are difficult to meet without proper funding from the province, whether it's the pace of permitting or community opposition. How do you... we can talk about numbers, but how do you actually set targets that would be achievable?
Well, we need the workers to build it, certainly. And it's interesting that the mayors or other people would certainly, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. Like for a lot of people who are looking for work, people who are carpenters, plumbers, who run small businesses, there's a lot of opportunity in this. So I do find the perspective interesting that this is job creation. And people say, oh, where are we going to get the workers? Another way to look at that is like, great, we're going to need more workers. People are going to have more opportunities to build things and to do things. So it's actually an economic development opportunity for those mayors, those regions, and for this province, if we want to take it.
We have an email from David who writes us at bctoday@cbc.ca. And we're asking you what housing is missing and is needed in your community. And do you think that your municipality is doing enough to meet the need? Our numbers again, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. And David writes, the housing that is clearly missing across BC is affordable housing and public housing. For far too long, successive governments at all levels have believed that the market could adequately deliver affordable and accessible housing. However, in valorizing market-oriented solutions only, we have clearly forgotten that government, co-op, and nonprofit housing units can provide an important pro-public supply, especially for those who are hard to house, and Indigenous, working class, seniors, students, and newcomers, amongst others. David, thank you very much for your email to BC Today at cbc.ca. And Daniel Oleksiak is with me from Abundant Housing Vancouver. What do you make of that email? The province has also sent guidelines to these municipalities as to what kind of units they would be and how many rooms, for example. What do you think is missing?
Oh, I think David makes a really good point that we do need a more affordable housing supply. We need more co-ops, things like this. One person I listen to a lot on this is Jill Atke of the BC Nonprofit Housing Nonprofit Housing Association, and she continually makes the point that the same zoning rules that make it difficult to build market rate apartments also apply to non-market homes. So if you wanted to build a 6-story non-market home in the district of North Vancouver or in Oak Bay or in Abbotsford or any city on this list, the association or the nonprofit group that wants to do that is going to have to jump through so many hoops. It takes years to get that built. It's a real problem. It adds a lot of cost, adds a lot of delay. So yeah, changing the zoning rules to allow 6 or 12-story nonprofit housing in all of these municipalities so that can happen a lot more quickly is something that I would love to see from any municipality and even from the provincial government. But again, it's not in yesterday's announcement. It's not something that we've seen yet.
You know, you talked about how governments like to put out headlines, and something that the province has done to try and set up that more affordable rental units, for example, is to try to protect those older buildings, right, and enable nonprofits to take over them. We seem to have seen so many announcements from the province when it comes to trying to address housing. Do all these steps, I mean, what do they amount to for you?
Well, I think if you look at an area, again, most of the areas in most of our cities is zoned right now and it's privately owned, detached, market rate housing. It's not affordable to very many people. In the west side of Vancouver, it's something like $3 million now. And in Uplands, you're going to have the mayor of Oak Bay on later. You know, I'd like to hear the mayor of Oak Bay explain who and what he thinks the zoning in Uplands is for. You know, it's $5 million mansions. Only mansion owners, only the very rich can afford to get in there. Apartments are illegal. I would love to hear him explain, or her, I don't know if you know the mayor of Oak Bay, who they think that's for. In my view, it's exclusionary, it's wrong, it's harmful. It's a beautiful seaside community, and it'd be a great place to build lots of nice apartments for people to live. That can't happen right now because it's all set aside for the very rich.
So
that's not fair.
For the province, you're saying targets are not enough. For municipalities, you're saying there's not enough of a willingness.
There's not enough of a willingness. I think what we're going to see is in 5 years, it's likely that you walk down those same really expensive streets and they'll look much the same as they do now. They might be even more expensive than they are today.
Okay, we are going to connect now with the mayor of Oak Bay, Daniel Oleksiak. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Daniel Oleksiak is director of Abundant Housing Vancouver, asking you what kind of housing you think is missing in your community. You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, or pound 690 on your cell phone. And we are joined now by Kevin Murdoch, mayor of Oak Bay on Vancouver Island. And the province has set a target of 664 units for his municipality. Mayor Murdoch, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm sure you heard the comments there from Daniel Oleksiak, but first, can I ask you, can you meet that target of 664 units in 5 years?
It's possible. It is definitely not easy, but it is possible. It depends a little bit on some, obviously we don't build housing as municipalities, so we're dependent upon external factors to a large degree, but we can certainly set the conditions, and I think with some provincial assistance, maybe some federal assistance, we can get there.
You have been talking about that assistance that is needed from the province or the federal government. What are we talking about there? How much financial support do you think is needed, and for what? As you mentioned, you don't build the housing.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I don't even know the answer to that question. One of the things that they've said is that here's your target, months we're going to come back and measure your success. We've been upfront on this saying we don't know how we're going to get there without some direct provincial involvement. And so we'd like them to be with us from day one to sort of walk through some of the possibilities, because delaying some of these conversations by 6 months doesn't seem to make any sense. So it might be financial, and probably we'll have some. We're kind of an interesting test case in many ways, because most of the jurisdictions that are being in the initial 10 are quite large. And I think the next largest is twice our size, and above that is twice that size again. So we're in the small end of the scale, but there's a lot of small to medium communities in BC that are going to be facing similar constraints, just small planning departments, everything else that comes with that. So I think part of this is, what do we need to be successful? So some of that is probably speeding up initiatives we already have going, but if we can speed up things like improvements to our electronic permitting systems and processes to make sure that we're as fast as we can be in our development application process. So there's some money and skill sets probably there, but there's also, realistically, we have University of Victoria in our jurisdiction that has some potential land that's been identified as potential for development, but they don't have capital or even the skill sets necessarily in-house to develop it. So perhaps the province can come to the table through BC Housing or through other mechanisms to help move some of those projects forward. So there's a number of ways I can see. We don't know exactly what it'll look like until we sit down and talk to them.
Okay. And so the prospect of the province stepping in, what do you make of that?
Well, I take the province stepping in as meaning that they're willing to help us. And that's, I don't want to wait 6 months where they come in and say, write us a report weekly to tell us why you're not meeting the targets. We know they're going to be hard to meet, and we're only going to meet them if they're at the table with us.
Okay, but that target is something you welcome, the target of 664.
Yeah, it's in fact, the 644 number, I think our internal number, not internal, but we did a housing needs report a couple of years ago, and our number was within 10 or 15 of that number, 625 or 630 or something. So, no, 640 something. Yeah, so we're very close.
Okay.
And I don't think that number's the off part. The hard part is, when we don't have empty public land, we don't have projects in the queue right now that are being held up. There's nothing like that happening. So we're looking at.
You have rejected high density projects before, including the Quest development proposal. And, to our previous guest's point, with Abundant Housing Vancouver, it seems to be an unwillingness to rezone those large single family lots where there is a lot of space for more dense housing. Is there resistance in Oak Bay?
I'll say there's both resistance and enthusiasm. Probably that's not unusual, but we've been going through, and we're well on our way in our infill housing project, which is looking at, we really talk about new multifamily units on single family lots. That's really distributed throughout the community, and there's been a lot of support for that. The one application, and I just want to point out, there has been one application in the time I've been on council, in 12 years, that was turned down by council, and it is back in front of us again now.
Yes.
So I don't want to speak too much about it, but one in 12 years, everything else that's come forward has been approved. So I don't think this is so much a resistance to or an inability to approve things. Part of the issues are, when you look at the projects that have come forward, they're awkward. Like, we just did a small corner commercial with rental units above. But the size of the lot is like 7,000 square feet. It's a small to medium, single family lot. Like they're very difficult to make both financially work and to make them work just size wise within a community. So this is often our problem, is we have to take down one house and put in something else, and the market is having a hard time meeting that need. Now we can help. I want to say we can't help. We need to make our changes, and we're well on our way of doing that already. And of course, there's new legislation coming in the fall from the province, so we'll see how that dovetails with our existing work.
Would you rezone high income communities, single family communities, to allow for those multi-unit developments?
Yeah, and I don't want to presuppose, because there's two parallel things happening here, and I have to always speak because we are legally obligated to have an open mind. Yes, that is a possibility. There are multiple different ways that we could allow those things to happen. It could be rezoning. It could be, predetermined if you meet certain criteria. There's a bunch of different, or like pre-approved or delegated authority for variances. There's a number of various tools that make sense depending on what we're talking about. So I guess the short answer is yes, but I just want to nuance that a little bit because there are sometimes better ways of doing it than just blanket zoning.
Okay, but you're open to those in those communities.
Well, our community, just for those who don't know, Oak Bay is a fairly small, 10 square kilometers on 2.5 sides with water on it, fully built out community of mostly single family residential development, aside from a few small commercial nodes. And we are one of the more expensive communities in Canada.
Yes.
So it's almost all of our lots are wealthier or more expensive land units, which actually has made it more difficult in some ways to find multifamily options because the acquisition cost of even a small piece of property, let alone land accumulation to do more medium and larger things, is very prohibitive. And that's just a market issue that we recognize and, again, want to figure out solutions for, but are probably going to be dependent upon the federal or the provincial governments finding some financial tools to make that possible.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us with your reaction to this. Good to have you.
Yeah, my pleasure. And we are very excited about this opportunity to kind of move some of these initiatives forward. So, thank you for the opportunity. Are we done here, or are we?
We are finished. Yes, you are. I'll let you off the hook for now, but I heard you say the word opportunity there. I heard that from the previous guest as well with Abundant Housing Vancouver. So we'll see what opportunities there are to meet the housing demand in this province. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Kevin Murdoch is mayor of Oak Bay on Vancouver Island. And still on the island, Diana wrote us, in my community of Metchosin, one councillor would like to see density reduced. And in general, the mayor and council are not doing enough to support housing. We need small, affordable housing in this community, not mansions, which are allowed. Thanks very much, Diana. BC Today at cbc.ca is where you can reach us. Send us more of your thoughts on what's needed to meet the housing demand in your community. This is BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thank you so much for joining us. And coming up in our next half hour, we want to ask you about your favorite fall activities. Have you been out? Have you been camping? The campfire ban in the coastal fire region is lifted as of noon today. So let us know if you're taking advantage of that. Are you out hiking, checking out the fall foliage? Love to hear from you and check out your emails as well. Send us those photos, bctoday at cbc.ca. We'll take your calls coming up after this CBC News Update with Robert Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. A Vancouver police officer has been cleared of any wrongdoing in connection with the death of a man on the Granville Bridge earlier this year. Witnesses reported the man may have been suicidal, and when an officer tried to talk to him, he pulled out a knife and a screwdriver. One video showed the man charge at officers, and that's when one of them fired his gun. Teaching assistants at Simon Fraser University are planning to walk off the job in a full-scale strike starting tomorrow. The union, representing more than 1,600 workers, claims the university has been unwilling to engage in meaningful negotiations. And as Michelle mentioned, campfire bans in the Coastal Fire Centre have lifted for the first time since early July. Similar bans on campfires in the Kamloops Fire Centre will be removed tomorrow. The BC Wildfire Service says there have been no new fire starts in the last 24 hours. And now the forecast on the north coast. Rain this afternoon with a high of 13. Highs up to 17 with a chance of showers and local smoke in the Peace. In the central interior, mainly cloudy with a high of 16. Highs around 12 degrees with showers in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, a chance of showers with a high of 12 as well. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, a chance of showers this afternoon with highs around 15 degrees. I'll have more local news at the top of the hour. Now back to Michelle with BC Today.
It is a welcome change in the weather, isn't it?
Sure.
When you hear things like campfire bans are lifted, you can go outside and it's not so smoky. I know there's local smoke in the Peace, so keeping that in mind, and campfire bans still in effect in other parts of the province. But I go out as soon as I see sunshine, I head out, but it's not, the air is fresh. Come on, Rob, you can enjoy
I'm
it.
not a fall fan, Michelle, but if you
No
say
pumpkin
so,
spice
no.
latte
I
for
mean,
you.
obviously, it's great that the fires are coming under control.
Yes.
But yeah, just sunshine without any fire. That works.
That's good for everyone.
Yes.
I'm going to head out and get you a PSL right now,
I
right
don't
after
know what a
the show.
PSL is.
Pumpkin spice latte,
Oh,
Rob.
Yeah, I'll
Embrace
pass.
the fall.
Thanks, though. I'll pass on that.
Thank you very much, Rob.
Okay.
Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. This is BC Today here on CBC. We're on Radio 1, 88.1 FM in Vancouver as well. Live streaming, of course, cbc.ca/BC. You can use the CBC Gem app or you can catch us on YouTube. CBC Vancouver is how you can find us. Well, we are now into that beautiful fall weather. I'm a fan. Some rain, some cloud cover, some sunny days as well, but cooler temperatures thanks to all that fall weather conditions. By the way, as of noon today, as you've been hearing, the campfire ban in the coastal fire region lifted as of noon just about half an hour ago. And tomorrow, the Kamloops Fire Region Category 1 fires will be allowed. So that's in the Kamloops region tomorrow. Category 2 and 3 fires still prohibited. And of course, some bans still in other parts of the province. For a complete list of that, you can go to the BC Wildfire website or their account on X, formerly known as Twitter, and you go to their website as well for more information. But we do want to celebrate fall outdoor activities now. We want to hear from you. What are your favorite fall outdoor experiences? Are you a hiker, a camper, just sitting in your backyard or in a park? We'd love to hear from you. Are you looking forward to that? Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. We would also love to see your photos if you have them. Have you captured the gorgeous fall foliage or, seen the glistening, glimmering lakes in the sunshine? You can email us rather, bctoday@cbc.ca. I understand you have been emailing them already, and we're excited to be able to showcase those photos for you in just a few moments. But joining me live in studio is Brent Hillier, an outdoor educator with the Canada West Mountain School. No pumpkin spice latte, though.
No pumpkin spice latte for me, but I do enjoy fall, that's for sure.
I know you do. You've just come back from a trip, haven't you?
I have. I was out in Garibaldi last week with the school program, and it was getting pretty chilly up there, but it was beautiful.
I bet. Tell us first. I know you sent us some photos as well. It looked gorgeous. There were some sunset shots in there. Can you describe what it was like?
I like being out in the fall, especially at that higher elevation.
Yes.
You kind of hit this perfect moment up in the Alpine where there's no snow. You get those little moments of sunshine still, and it's quite beautiful to be out there. And then it does get chilly at night, but you just need the right gear and you can still be comfortable.
That's exactly it. So what's different in the fall then? What do people need to keep in mind?
Yeah, it can turn to winter suddenly. We had a dusting up in the Alpine, and so you'll wake up to frost if you're sleeping out in the backcountry. And I think it's just important to be prepared that we're on the cusp of a major change, and that change happens a lot sooner at higher elevations.
Do people get stumped? Do they get surprised by that?
I guess so.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had enough seasonal changes now that I think I expect them when they happen. But,
Right.
I think it always catches a lot of people off guard or by surprise.
And we talked about the campfire ban lifting in the coastal fire region. I know, having been out as well, smoky conditions, I always check the AQHI factor, the reading there. It's been a factor, right, for people who head outside this past summer. So does that mean it's kind of a reprieve now then?
For sure, yeah. It's definitely, we're kind of past having to check that part of Environment Canada's website. There'll be some other, environmental things that we'll need to check as far as rain and weather, that kind of thing. But we're hopefully done with smoke for the next few months.
What's your biggest piece of advice, Brent, as we get started with this conversation, just as people do start to head out specifically to enjoy fall?
Yeah, I think if you're an avid hiker or whatever activity you do, probably as the weather got nicer over the summer, things maybe left your backpack. And so making sure that you're getting that stuff back in there, that colder weather type equipment, making sure that you're prepared.
Yeah. I know I went out with just a little bit too little water. And I know that may not be, when it's colder and more of a concern in the hot weather, but be prepared, maybe have a little bit more than you need.
Yeah, we haven't had the snow come back.
Yeah.
So water is quite sparse when you get up in higher elevations. It's still kind of very summer-like in that respect, as
Right.
far as not a lot of water.
Yeah. What about wildlife? As the bears are out getting ready for hibernation. I know I'm seeing a lot of people say, "Oh, you saw a black bear over here on this trail." So what do people need to keep in mind there?
Yeah, bears are just trying to get ready for hibernation, and so they're getting a little stressed at this point.
Yes.
They need to eat some more food. They're not feeling like they've maybe taken on enough calories to survive the winter, and so we just need to give them space, like always, but especially as we kind of get into the fall. And then there's areas where the berries are going to be ripe at this point, and so they're going to want to take advantage of that. So just be cautious when you're out there.
Okay, we want to hear from our listeners too. Let us know if you have been out, whether it's hiking, if you've been on a camping trip this fall, or you are planning a trip. We'd love to hear from you. What is it that you love about the outdoors in BC in the fall? Give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. And email us too. If you want to email us your experience or your photos, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. If you don't have any photos, you can just email us a description of why you love the fall and how you enjoy the outdoors in BC. We're putting together our photos right now and building that for you so you can see what people have been sending us over the past hour. But I know you've just been to Garibaldi. What are your favorite places to visit in the fall?
Well, as the rain kind of comes back, I live on the North Shore, and I absolutely love the North Shore. And it's
not a bad place to be.
No, it's not a bad spot to be. And so for me, it's a rainforest, and it really comes
Yes.
alive as soon as that rain happens. So I was out last night doing some trail work on a trail that I work on the North Shore. I help out with the North Shore Mountain Bike Association, and fall's a great time to kind of do that. I got out on the river up to Capilano this morning and just kind of walked around, checked in on the salmon, see if there was any in the river yet. And? There's a few, I saw a couple swimming around.
Yeah.
So hopefully when those river levels come up, we'll see that big run of salmon go up there.
I'm hoping to make it out there myself. I know there was a bit of a trail cleanup happening over the weekend as well.
Yeah, this is a great time to get involved with any of the local trail associations across the province. They're always looking for volunteers, and as we kind of get some more moisture in the dirt, we can start to do trail work or cleanups or invasive plant
Plants,
removals, that kind of thing. So.
And how big a problem, I guess, is waste. I was quite surprised at how much people were cleaning up.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I see in Garibaldi all the time.
Yeah. The popular places.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We say pack it in, pack it out.
Yeah.
And it's really just a few bad apples out there, but it's a lot of garbage that ends up getting produced by that small percentage of people. And the responsibility is kind of put on the rest of us to pack out other people's garbage, and it's a shame.
That is unfortunate.
Hopefully, people can do better in the future. So it doesn't happen.
What's your message then to people?
I think it's the same message that we've always kind of said: is if you packed it in there, you should be packing it out, and that goes for biodegradable stuff as well. Banana peels, apple cores, that stuff's not natural to these environments, and so we should be packing that stuff out as well.
Okay, really good tips. We want to hear from you too. Do you have any tips for being out in the outdoors, especially in the fall? How do you stay bear aware? What are your own tips for ensuring you have enough warmer clothing for when the temperature changes? We'd love to hear from you about your fall outdoor experiences. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And let us know how things change for you in the fall. But we know that things have changed with our climate, Brent. And we have just been through, of course, the world's worst wildfire season. There are warnings of a serious flood risk this coming season. So how do the effects of climate change affect the outdoors community?
Yeah, it's one of those things where the more time I spend outdoors, the more I see changes that I just haven't seen in the past. And we've had a lot of closures of late. The Coquihalla being completely washed out a couple of years ago.
2021.
Things like that. And those are areas that I love to recreate in, and there seems to be more places that we just can't get access to because of these huge landslides, flooding events. The Skagit River Valley, that's another area that still you can't gain access to. They're working on kind of repairing the road there, but there's a lot of big kind of weather disasters that are happening right now, and it's affecting our access to these beautiful places. It's unfortunate.
And so does that make you personally think more about that issue?
Yeah, I mean, I've always it's always been something that's on the front of my mind. And I think what we're just seeing right now is examples of how it can affect our day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
It's a big thing to deal with climate change, and it's hard for one individual to kind of face it. But if we can all do a little bit, I think, we all have our specialties and we all have things that we're passionate about. And if we all can kind of just do a little bit, hopefully we can make some change.
Where does your own passion come from?
I mean, I like the outdoors a lot. It was an area that I grew up in, and my parents gave me this wonderful opportunity to just spend time outside and have this kind of wonderful childhood in the woods. And the forest that was kind of near my home actually was developed, and that kind of radicalized me a little bit. I actually lost my forest, my wild space that I would explore as a kid. And so it's always been something that I've tried to be very passionate about, making sure that we're advocating for these spaces and we're protecting them and we're using them in a good way.
And the students who I know you were out at Garibaldi with students and teaching them, what is their own approach? What brings them to the outdoors?
Yeah, there's all sorts of outdoor programs that I work with.
Yeah.
And some of them are mandatory outdoor ed, where they want everybody in the school to go out and do something in the outdoors. And so we really try to make easy, accessible things for them. But there's other programs that I do where it's backpacking trips or cycling trips. And students get to elect to do those types of programs. And so they might not have access to that. It might not be something that their parents do, but they feel like it's something they want to try. And so it's about just giving them those opportunities to try that stuff.
Yeah. Do you find, we sometimes have heard of that kind of nature deficit that young kids seem to have because they're stuck on their iPhones and iPads and technology. Do you find that has had an impact on young people you work with?
Yeah, absolutely. I when I got into kind of outdoor education and working with youth especially, I did it because I'm passionate about it and I enjoy it, and I think it's something that kids really need. But now as we kind of get further along, it's critical for them. I think a lot of kids aren't being taught problem-solving skills in the same way that we used to grow up problem solving.
Right.
And in the outdoors, we have to problem solve.
Sure, yeah.
And we can't Google something. We don't have access to it. And so there's a skill set that these kids are learning out there.
You're constantly adjusting and problem solving.
Yeah.
I mean, even just traversing root and rock, right?
Yeah.
It's constant.
And nothing's the same. And,
Yes.
and that's what's kind of why I like it so much, is that the challenge is constantly changing and evolving, and we're using these past experiences to make decisions, but we never see the same thing twice.
That's very true. You need to pay attention. I know I have had some near misses, unfortunately, because I get distracted by something, but there you go. Perhaps you can go through the 10 essentials with us. I know that sometimes there are people who are new to hiking, right?
Yeah, the list of 10 essentials, we try to call them the essentials because it depends on the certain activities that you do. If I'm paddling, for example, the life jacket is a pretty essential thing as well.
Yes.
But there is kind of these 10 that seem to make every single list. And, communication is a big one. So if you're in cell service, you can use a cell phone as your communication device. But if you're not going to be in cell service, then having some sort of a satellite communication device, so an InReach, a Zoleo, or a Spot device is really helpful. Extra clothing, some sort of shelter that you can create, whether that's as simple as like an emergency blanket or a tarp, water, food, some navigational tools, hopefully navigational tools that don't suddenly stop working because your phone battery dies. That classic map and compass is great, but you need to know how to use that stuff. And that's where it takes kind of practicing the skills, not just having the equipment out there.
Thank you for taking us through that. I always try to go through that list because we have people who may be new and are just getting into it. And it's always good to have a reminder. Brent Hillier is with me, an outdoor educator. And we're asking you, what do you love about the outdoors in the fall especially? And what are your own tips for enjoying the outdoors and being safe as well. We have a call from Wilhelm in Port Hardy. Hello there.
Okay, you're looking good. Yeah. Okay.
Hi,
I don't know
Wilhelm.
if they put me on or not. Yeah.
Can you hear me, Wilhelm?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
Great. And so let us know, what is it that you love about the outdoors?
Well, of course, at this time, the big thing was mushroom picking.
Yes.
Going out in the forest and pick chanterelles. And then I would give some to my neighbors. And
Very
that was
popular with the
highlight
neighbors.
Of the fall. And of course, the trees when they change color. And my birthday is also, of course, in October. That's another highlight for me. It's a very relaxing time. And in a few days, I'll be 93.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so the mushroom pickers are very busy right now. And I can't really say I begrudge them because we all have our time. And but that is the highlight of autumn. It's a beautiful day. A beautiful way of saying fall instead of fall, the word autumn. And if you read the poem Elegy by Thomas Gray, that's a beautiful poem, by the way, and that's I recommend that everyone look that up and read about the ancient life of on a farm with the elm in front of the farmhouse. That was the beautiful thing, living out in a little village where I used to come from, 2,000 feet up in 20 miles east of Bayreuth. Actually, every time I stepped out of the car, there's my dogs. Stepped out of the car, I could feel the mountain air, different from the heavy air from the coast here, but you get used to anything. But anyway, mushroom pickers, all the best out there, and watch out for the bears, but the bears don't really do any harm anyone as long as you don't surprise them, okay?
That's right.
And the CBC, by the way, we need that CBC. I've been living with the CBC ever since the 1950s, so you're doing a good job.
Well, I really appreciate hearing from you, Wilhelm. You've taken us down, a nostalgic road for yourself, and a big happy birthday to you, turning 93.
Thank you very much. Yeah. All the best to everyone, your listeners.
So great to hear from you. Thank you very much for calling in. That's Wilhelm joining us from Port Hardy. Yes, mushroom picking. He says, he's not able to go now, but he doesn't begrudge anybody being busy out there right now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of mushrooms out there right now. They're just beautiful to look at. So, foraging for mushrooms is there's a lot to learn, and there's some huge risks associated with eating the wrong mushrooms. But that doesn't mean that you can't go out there and just look at them and take photos of them and start to try to identify them. But it is something that if you are going to eat those mushrooms, you need to be pretty sure about them.
Absolutely. That's a very, very good warning there. By the way, he was talking about being outdoors and seeing and taking photos. Thank you very much for all your photos you've been sending us. If you want to go to our live stream right now, either on our website, cbc.ca/BC, on YouTube, CBC Vancouver, or you can use the CBC Gem app. We have some gorgeous, gorgeous shots right at the Alpine and, some people picking at a farm, it looks like. Really beautiful colors, and there's someone on a hike right now. So you can see our photos. We're showcasing them on our live stream right now. Thanks very much to Michael Hayden, Vivian Addison, Alan Murphy, and Allison Hutchinson as well, David Sadaway, and Jesse Parkin. Thank you for all of your photos that you've sent to BC Today at cbc.ca. We enjoy seeing them very, very much. And if you want to give us a call in the last few minutes of the show here, it's 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. And you can hit pound 690 as well. If you want to email us, bctoday at cbc.ca. My guest is Brent Hillier, an outdoor educator with the Canada West Mountain School. And what's the biggest thing about fall that you enjoy? I know it's going to be outdoors. Is it the colors? Is it, the difference in temperature? Or?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've evolved a little bit over the years. Mountain biking was a big passion of mine, and
Yes.
it still is a passion. But I always was excited about that moisture coming back into the dirt, and getting out for mountain bike rides. But now I find myself spending more time on the river. So I'm kind of out there on the water, and the salmon run is just something that really interests me every year, and I love being down there.
Ah, that's fantastic. And let's speaking of water, our next caller is talking about canoeing. It sounds like Jamie is joining us from near Fairmont Hot Springs. Hello, Jamie.
Hi, how are you doing?
I am doing well. What do you love about the fall?
Oh, we're heading on a week-long canoe trip to the Barwon Lakes next week, and looking forward to it.
Big smile here on Brent's face. So you're going on a canoe trip, and what are your plans? How long is it going to be?
A whole week.
A whole week. Wow. Okay. And what is it that you're looking forward to the most? Jamie, can you hear me? I think we may have lost. Maybe he's on his way already, and cell reception is not so great. You were nodding there and smiling. Yeah.
The Barwon Lakes is something that I would like to do at some point. So my family and I, we've just kind of gotten back into canoeing over the last couple of years, and it's a great family activity. You can put the kids in the boat and paddle. You don't have to carry as much stuff, and there's lots of paddles that you can do without having to do portages as well.
Right. Nice to get to those campsites that are canoe. You reach by paddle as well. It just feels very remote.
It does.
One last piece of advice that you can leave us with.
I think the biggest thing is just get outside and have some fun, and just make sure that you do a little bit of research before you get out there. It's always one of those things that make sure you kind of know where you're going, make sure you've got a bit of a plan, come up with an idea of what things you need to bring, and always let somebody know where you're going before you head out there.
That is very important. So good to have you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brent Hillier, an outdoor educator with the Canada West Mountain School. That's it for our show today. You can listen again on the CBC Listen app. You can watch us on demand on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. And thank you again for all of your photos. Thanks to Susan Gray in Prince George, who sent CBC this joyful video of a black bear blissfully playing in a backyard pond. We'll leave you with that image on our live stream. You can head to cbc.ca/BC to watch it right now. I'm Michelle Eliot. Thank you very much for listening and watching. We can talk to you tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.